What's happening, everybody? What's happening? Like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you'll get access to all archive videos. Support Black Male Media, support independent media, super chats enabled. Super thanks for the replay gang. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. And if you would like to feed me sandwiches, hit the Cash App. And actually, there's a code, there's a barcode or whatever, something you can scan with your phone right now on the screen if you'd like to support in that way. Yeah, Dr. Thunder. This is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. And today's show is a part 2. Part 1 was a couple weeks ago on Ike Ogiamian's channel. And this is the longest running productivity program, episodic program in this space. Shout out to Skills and Resources. Shout out to Level Up. Shout out to building yourself into a high value man. So yeah, we talk on a number of topics associated with upward mobility at your workplace, understanding office politics, personality types, using leverage to assist your ascent. And today's show is no different. This is part 2, how to build a dream team. As the old saying goes, if you want to go fast, go it alone. But if you want to go far, you have to do that together. You must go together. So, who is it that you're going to take with you? What capabilities do they have? What qualities do they have? How do you know if you're picking the right people? Well, we've been using to contextualize our conversation a video by Patrick Bet-David from his channel Valuetainment. And it's 14 points on the topic, how to build a dream team as an entrepreneur. And as I said, part 1 was on Ike Ogiamian's channel. Part 1 was on Ike's channel. So make sure you head over and check that out after today's show. Now, I'm streaming on multiple locations, Facebook, and where else am I at? Twitter, X, of course, YouTube. Let's see here. I'm LinkedIn. And where else am I streaming? I think I'm streaming on Twitch also right now. So thanks for coming through. Now, if you would like to learn more about leveling up, about getting skills and resources, fully utilizing and accessing them, developing them, and productivity, then make sure that you subscribe to both of our channels. And there's a playlist on both of our channels of back episodes. So make sure you check out all of the episodes in the series. Lots of great information. And without further ado, part 2, how to build a dream team. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Because leveling up is disturbing. How are you doing, man?
Yep. It's a crime, don't you know?
That's
I'm doing
right.
well.
We
How are
might
you?
we might insist that you have to get off your duff and go actually do something. And that could be triggering. So so how are you doing, man? How's it been?
Overall, can't complain as usual. It's uh been a busy end of the year, which is good, right? That's not a bad thing. Not complaining, but it's kind of crazy. Typically towards the end of the year, or typically when there's any kind of a holiday, or even the weekends, every weekend, I kind of look forward to being able to catch up on what I need to do, as opposed to blocking and tackling the incoming, right? Emails, phone calls, blah, blah, blah. But it seems like there are other people, there are more people kind of awake and alert emailing me this time around. I don't know what's going on. Maybe maybe the message is getting out, the skills and resources messages. uh but it's all good. Here in the States, I'll probably be heading to Africa again in February. But all is well. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Um, been having some really good shows. Numbers are, uh, improving. It's a slow process, a little bit at a time. Talking about the YouTube grind here, and if y'all wonder the kind of content, my content is unapologetically. It centers black men and boys, but particularly black men and boys. And so those are the kind of topics that I tend to discuss with frankness. And and I noticed that I have my J Word shirt on today. Those of you that have been watching may remember a couple shows that I've done discussing how the J Word is actually a pejorative. If you want to see what I mean by that, then you need to become a channel member, at least at the master's degree level. That's right, always selling. So let's go ahead and jump on over to our video. And as I said before, if you want to check out part 1, make sure you go over to Ike's channel and make sure you sub to Ike's channel. Make sure you like the video, give him some watch time, become a channel member. All of that good stuff. Great content over there. Very, very thoughtful, intellectual, very, very fine content. So make sure you get over there and check it out. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to recap. We're going to go back over 7, and then after this segment has played, then we can do a little bit of maybe an assessment. Maybe you can provide a sort of summation of what we've been discussing thus far after this plays, and then we'll get to the new points 8 through 14. Here we go.
Don't compromise the big. Sometimes people lower the standards and they settle because they compromise the big. Do not compromise the big. I had a conversation with a husband and wife a couple days ago, and they would call me, and we had a conversation for 20, 30 minutes, and they were stressed. I said, wait a minute, let me do the math here on what you're really worried about. I said, so you're worried about this number here? Yes. I said, how much money is this from January 1st till today? $1,500. I said, how many weeks have we had from January 1st till today? 18 weeks. What's 1,500 divided by 18 weeks? $80. Are you really trying to tell me you're worried on $80 a week check is what's stressing you out when you got a $20,000 check waiting for you? And I said, stop compromising the big and focus on the big. This is costing you millions by doing that. Okay, sometimes if you truly want to build a dream team, you cannot compromise the big. It's always here, not here. You're focused here. Okay, number 8. Watch.
All right.
Okay.
So if you can give us a sort of a summation of the first 7.
Yeah. So basically, one of the main things that he addressed in the first part, which is, the first 7 parts, was about balancing the personas in your team, not just skill wise. Because obviously, hey, I need a salesperson, I need a finance person, I need somebody that can talk to people, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you have these particular skill sets that people have that you're trying to balance. However, it's also very important to balance personalities. Understand that there are different personalities, and you might even exclude some that you're not so fond of, or that you might not be amenable to your purposes, right? So balancing personas was a big one. And then also he talked about the idea of understanding that some people need to get buy into the vision. Well, he put it as in, like, make sure everybody is bought into the vision, but we also understood that there's a small subset of people whom are more like mercenaries, right? They don't necessarily need to buy into the vision, but they're good at what they do. They'll go out there, they'll execute at a high level every time, and you need to be able to understand the difference. So, for example, if you're somebody that always needs people to buy into the vision, you might miss out on the mercenary type, whom is not so much into the vision or the potluck or the saluting the flag, but they might be some of your best performers. Okay, and shout out to the introverts out there; they're probably going to fall more in the mercenary category than the other. And he talked about creating competition as well, because I'm just picking some points that I remember, right? You talk about creating competition, for example, hiring 2 people at the same time so that you see how things work out. Typically, it's a good idea. People like competition, and some people fall short when the competition starts easing off away from them, right? So overall, and obviously he just talked about raising the standards and not compromising, and he mentioned that in the beginning here, but it was a theme that ran through the last episode, and he mentioned it here. Don't compromise, raise the standards so you don't compromise on the big things, right? So create competition, balance personas, and understand what motivates different people. Yes, generally speaking, people need to be bought into the vision, but there also is a small subset of mercenary types who can execute at a high level without necessarily buying into the vision. I think those are some of the main and most salient points out from the first part, which, by the way, you should check out, as Dr. Thunder said, and I have the link in the chat.
Yes, the link is in the chat, and I'm highlighting it right now. But yeah, click that, go check it out. All right. Number 8, watch long-term versus short-term thinkers.
Who's a long-term thinker, who's a short-term thinker. Always watch a long-term thinker or short-term thinker. What's the difference? Short-term thinker, they're filling up their resume. I worked with this guy. We had a guy that just came here one time as a assistant kid, like an 18, 19-year-old kid, and he left. He says, honestly, I just wanted to be able to say that I worked for Valuetainment and I worked directly with you for a 90-day period. And I'm like, okay, all right, cool, no problem. Young kid did it fine. We're totally fine with that. But that's a short-term thinker. Long-term thinking, to build this dream team, you need a long-term thinker, supporting cast. Everything's got to be bought into the long-term vision. Number 9.
That's an interesting nuance. And I like, with these videos, there's always the thing that sort of irritates you, right? 3 points that are really the same point. Because, you want like 10 of this, or 5 ways to that, or 14 point, and it's hard to actually be unique and have categories that are not mutually exclusive, or that are mutually exclusive rather. You're always going to have some overlap with that. And he does some of that, but I actually like him because he actually he doesn't do that as much as other folks that we've looked at do. And there always seems to be a little bit extra nuance or something on at least the angle, the way that he's approaching each of his points. And so this is interesting. The folks that are maybe they want to get some, pad their resume, or they just want to get a certain experience, or they really respect you. They want to learn something from you. They want to say that they did it. And my thing is, as long as they are good workers and they're following through to whatever their terms are, if it's 3 months, if it's 9 months, whatever it is, then it's fine. And I think about this in relationship often to, so I have, I direct a commercial music ensemble. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of pieces are moving around. And I try to keep the ensemble the same for the school year. But it's not possible because people have different things that they need to do. They have other courses that may conflict. They may have too many credits, and there's all these factors. And sometimes people just want the experience. They want to do it for a semester, see what this is about, kick the tires, learn all that they can in that period of time. It's like the boot camp sort of experience. And others, they definitely, this is really what they want to do long term. And so they will, whatever it is, they will fix their schedule, they'll change stuff around, they will adjust other things, And so it's kind of analogous to that. And the thing is that with each, there's still a high expectation for output. You still have to do a good job. Mm-hmm. You still must do a good job. And generally speaking, they do. So there's no issue as long as you understand what the terms are. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Like your point there. Recently I'm talking to somebody that came back to me after having fell off. He was hired in like 2021, right? He was hired in 2021, straight out of college, and he didn't quite make the cut, right? So let him go. And recently he has come back and to apologize and see if there's an opportunity, right? And this idea of long-term versus short-term comes into mind because he had the mindset of, okay, I'm going to come out of college and I have a certain type of job that I'm expecting to have. And maybe this is just a stepping stone for me, as opposed to understanding that every piece of the house that you're building here is important. This particular foundation that you have here is very, very important, even if your goal is to go work at Lockheed Martin, right? And part of the conversation that I had with him also was, you cannot just look at, don't just do one thing. Okay? Don't just do one thing. It's not just this or Lockheed Martin. Okay? I didn't get here to the position where I'm trying to hire you by just doing one thing. Trust me. Okay? Never just do one thing. So I completely see your point about whether or not you're committed for the short term or the long term. Understand that up front and give it your all regardless. But if you're somebody that maybe, no, it's not a pejorative, maybe you're a little bit more emotional, maybe you're a little bit more starry-eyed about what exactly life is supposed to be, right? How your path is supposed to work out and this dream job and stuff like that. You're going to need to break that down because not only in your career, but I am sure everybody knows in all aspects of life, it is chaos, bro. It is chaos. It is
Yeah.
winds and storms and this and that's and all kinds of stuff coming at you. So you need to understand that whatever you're gonna do, you need to be able to get the best out of it. The foundation is as important as the roof, generally speaking. Okay. And don't just think that because, don't just think of it as a series of stepping stones where you completely give one up into the other. Now, not everybody will be able to do as much at a time, but especially given today's environment with the work from home, the fact that companies are not as loyal to you anyways, and your career and your retirement and the funds and the capital that you're able to gain and leverage is more and more on you these days than to the in the general society, be it government or civil society or the corporations and whatnot. You need to look at every opportunity, even though it was short term, as something that is a foundation as opposed to just a stepping stone. It's part of your foundation, so use it to solidify something, and relationships that will develop from that, also hold on to those because you never quite know where they'll lead you.
Yes, that's definitely true. And speaking of another student that I had, speaking of you were talking about, uh, recognizing that every position that you take is a pillar, is a foundational, is critical to where you're going to end up. This is sort of the general sentiment that you were drawing there. And I had a student, and he came to me once and he said, because I said to him in a lesson, um, you know, those of you that are waiting for your lives to begin, I said, if you're waiting for your life to begin, wake up. This is your life, right? And he came to me. We had lunch one time. This was after he graduated, and he told me that he appreciated me saying that because he was that person, and he's a real talented guy that was sort of waiting for his life to begin, and so perhaps was not as engaged in his classes or in fully juicing everything out of each moment, really taking everything seriously, just kind of letting time pass and, whatever happens, happens. He was doing too much of that. And when I said that to him, it caused him to realize that, um, he needed to make an adjustment. And he made that adjustment. But, I'll tell you, a lot of folks don't make that adjustment. They're sort of sleepwalking. This is walking around and whatever's happening is happening. And they're sort of in their mind, they're dreaming about some future moment. And, you're not going to get to that future moment unless you really seriously, take advantage of the current moment. That's the way that time works. You can't leapfrog. So, you can either get everything out of each moment and then make yourself better for those moments to come, or, because the future is not promised. And it's not like, it's not like if you aren't fully engaged that somehow things will happen faster. Actually, I'd argue that it would happen slower. So.
You know what? Just something about that. This is your life statement. I was wondering, like, what, and I'm sure he didn't necessarily elaborate on it, but one wonders, like, okay, what was the spark exactly? Because it's not some kind of a statement of like 1 + 1 is 2. It's like, oh, now I know that. Well, obviously, you didn't impart that kind of knowledge on him, right? It was more like an awakening, right? Where it was more from you turn something, some interaction happened within him, and then something opened up, right? And I think that part of it is just understanding that, one way to put it, is about responsibility and accountability, right?
Yeah.
And another kind of thing is sometimes people really think that the future is different subjectively, as in that somehow the future is not going to be the same first person perspective game that you're playing right now. If you don't learn this first person perspective game you're playing right now, dude, you're in for a rude
That's right.
awakening. If you think later on it's going to be like, I don't know, you're going to get a star from Mario Kart or something, and someone else is going to take the wheel. Jesus, take the wheel or something, right? It's like, no, it's going to be you, your dusty self. Open your eyes, you're going to see the same thing, breathe in the same oxygen as time passes. It does not change. So if you don't master the moment, there's never going to be any future moment that is going to convert you into some different being that now is master of the moment. The moment is all you ever have. So you better start mastering it now.
Yeah, 100%. And you're wasting time. Every moment that you're not fully taking advantage of that, fully engaged, milking every ounce out of each moment, the longer it's going to take. There's no magic. There's no magic moment. That's another thing. I think as you get older, you start to realize that there really is no magic moments, and that really what it is, it's about a combination of events, and you controlling those events, to your advantage. Taking advantage of them as much as possible, and you have to be aware. You have to be active. Your eyes have to be open so that when these events are happening. You're in control of them. You're driving the car. Jesus doesn't take the wheel. He uses your hands. He's not gonna force you. He's not gonna drug you. You pass out, and you wake up, and voila, you're at the location. That's not that's not how it works. I don't know. I know you Dusty Ninjas probably wished that's how it worked. But I'm sorry, I'm here to tell you that that's not how it works. All right, here goes the next point. Test until you trust.
Constantly test until you trust them. So watch how they handle crisis. I love testing people. I love testing the team. I love testing the people I work with. I just watch to see how they handle it, how they step up, how they rise up. Do they get ticked off? Do they kind of get to themselves? Do they all of a sudden go in the corner and stuff? Don't want to even deal with me because they're upset. And I realize how they handle crisis. And listen, you ain't going to build this with handling a lot of crisis. This dream team requires a ton of crisis. And if you cannot have people that handle crisis, you're going to have a very big problem trying to build this dream team together. So I test people by giving them challenges, calling them out, saying certain things, and I see who responds, who doesn't respond. And you kind of realize, well, this person's a lot tougher than I thought he was or she was. Okay, wow, this person may be here instead of here. And that person that's here maybe is really here because this person's showing a lot more heart. So test people. Don't be afraid of doing that. Number 11.
What do you
think about this? Well, so testing until you trust. The first thing we got to say is this trusting, break it down a little bit to at least the three components I always like to use, which is, you're going to test people's competence because it's one aspect of trust. You trust their competence, right? And also, do you trust their sobriety? Sobriety really is just another word for their ability. I think the idea that he just talked about, how they handle pressure, is an aspect of sobriety, right? Are they cool, calm, and collected? Okay. Now, obviously, these two things are separate because you could have a very cool, calm, collected person that's not very competent, right? These things are not necessarily related, right? They are mutually exclusive, if you will, right? So you want to test competence, test sobriety, and then there's one last aspect of trust, which is the intentions. Not so important to me, anyways. It's kind of similar to that whole are people bought into the vision story, right? Are they bought into the vision and the mission and that kind of stuff? Like, what exactly is this person's real intention? I tend not to operate that way. That's a function of my personality, anyways. It is what it is. But I'm more looking for sobriety, right? And then competence. As a matter of fact, I think sobriety is higher up than even competence for me. Because if you can handle yourself, right, then hey, unless you're a complete dummy, there's at least something that I know you can handle. One of which definitely is not to make things worse when right, not to make things worse when things start going down, right? And there's a steadiness to that sobriety. In other words, is this a known quantity externally, right? I don't want to go into people's minds and start going into what their intentions are, like how they really feel about these things. Like, that's a messy game to play. But over time, if you just you're tracking this particular thing on the radar over time, it's got a steady velocity. It goes where it's supposed to go, comes back every time. It's regular. It stays true. Wind, no wind, rain, sunshine, that radar is spotting this thing. That's a very, very reassuring kind of trust. And then you add competence on top of that, 100%. So definitely, if you're talking from the position of, let's say, you have a team and you're the leader, you want to train people, and this is a good way of testing them as well, right? You want to train them because you're gonna if you're gonna bring people into your team, it's almost something that you owe to them to be able to set the standard, make sure that they're keeping it up, and train them in one way or the other. Train will mean different things depending on what you're doing, right? Train might mean practice, for example, right, Dr. Thunder? You schedule regular practices, and that's a good thing. And within that regular practice, right, or the regular training, you're going to be able to run these tests, right? So for me, it's something that I do automatically, even perhaps up to what some might consider a fault. Meaning, I literally judge people from their appearance. Okay, now maybe I'm going a little a little crazy here, but it's a skill that I know that I have, and I can kind of trust, right? Yeah. I look at your mannerisms. I kind of look how you're kind of acting, and so on and so forth, and I know where to put you. Like, where am I gonna? Okay, and when I put you somewhere, typically it's kind of where you generally belong, and I'm not gonna mess with you more than that kind of a thing. So 100% test before you trust. Shout out to adult supervision in the chat. He talks about, well, the opposite is kind of crazy, right? Trust before you test, right? That would be insane. So test
Right.
before you trust, and then understand what are the things that are important to you. I just said that my hierarchy is that sobriety is very, very important because it's rare, Dr. Thunder, right? So sobriety, steadfastness, being on the ball, not freaking out in times of crisis is a rare thing. And it's something that I highly value. And then next, so yeah, sure, you got the competence. People's intentions, that's for extroverted feelers and stuff like that. I don't really, and I just think it's super judgy to start going into people's heads like that, right? And wondering how they really, But anyways, those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, and if y'all were wondering about this judging thing, although it is a popular thing for folks to say only God can judge and you're not supposed to judge and all this kind of stuff. Actually, Jesus tells us to judge a tree by its fruit. And that is an outward appearance. And if you think about what it says in 1 Peter about being sober and vigilant, for your adversary the devil walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Vigilance requires making quick assessments of your surroundings. Those are judgments. And I think we get mixed up when we start thinking about this. Really, what the prohibition in the Bible against judgment really is not about that sort of judgment or discernment. but rather it's against condemnation based on whatever your knowledge is of the person, right? So, like, this person needs to burn in hell. That's really what is being talked about. It's not talked about making assessments and quick judgments and learning everything that you can about human behavior and being able to categorize people. Those are skills that you must have if you're going to be a successful person, let alone be able to build a dream team. Now, I wanted to say, I think people, and this is one of these things where it's again important for people to be not just going through the motions, but really taking everything seriously, because you don't know when you're being evaluated. And frankly, I'll tell you, I'm evaluating people all the time. If I have given them a specific thing that I'm thinking this is going to be a good way to assess a particular skill, or if I just gave them something to do because I needed it to be done, and then I waited for either it was done well, or excuses, or I'm sorry, my printer ran out of ink, or whatever. I don't care about any of that stuff. I just want the thing done, right? And you're being evaluated probably way earlier than you think you are. And something I tell my students is, these other students that you're around, other musicians that you're around, your contemporaries, your classmates, they're paying attention to what's happening. And if you think that they're going to take a risk on hiring you for something after being shown that you shouldn't be trusted based on your conduct in school, I'll tell you, I wouldn't do that. There are certain students that were super talented that I went to school with that I'll never hire. And I'm talking about from when I was an undergraduate. So this is coming up on 30 years ago. Okay? And that's not, look, man, I don't have any, the thing is that I don't have a chance to, with many of them, I haven't had a chance to collaborate with them on projects since then. So I have whatever image I have. And so in a pinch, if I needed somebody, it ain't going to be them. So people are being tested all the time. And stay ready.
Yeah, I can think back now to because I was saying that I'm extreme in this particular regard. Yeah, there are people from what we call primary school back in Nigeria. That's before sixth grade, like sixth grade and below. There are people whom I have just permanently judged, like, and I was right. It's not like it's just some kind of crazy emotional thing. It's like, because there's certain things that are kind of fundamental. When you see somebody do certain types of things, or you're just like, okay, this is this guy is not worth the risk, right? Not worth the risk, that kind of a thing. But shout out to McDrama Beer, something you would like about the perfect practice, not just practice makes perfect, but the perfect practice. Taking things, you like to talk about the elbow grease that you put into that sandpaper is really what's gonna get the stuff work, not just going through the motions of going back and forth on the wood of this bass guitar you're trying to sand. No, it's about that elbow grease, attention to detail, all that stuff that burns up energy and forms beads of sweat on your head. that's really what makes the perfection happen. So yeah.
Yeah, and I like the comment that Mr. Rogers makes after that. He says, "Practice makes permanent." Right. So, however you practice, that's what's going to happen. It's not like something different is going to magically happen.
You know, this is and you see, this is Kaizo sometimes, you know, shout out to Kaizo. Who the hell is Kaizo? Somebody. I've been told that I have
That's
certain kinds
Kaizo
of
right there. See right here.
Well, there you
See,
go.
that's Kaizo. See right there.
There you go. Linking right
Yeah,
there.
that's
The
Kaizo. Yeah, all right.
bottom right. So he tells me that, oh, you have certain expectations of people. For example, I'll say, well, look, this person's an engineer. I expect them to X, Y, Z. Blah blah blah. So he is right in the sense that, in a particular sense, one of my expectations led me to make a quantitative error regarding the quantity, the percentage of quote unquote trained people that actually behave in the manner you would expect of trained people. Hey, you're trained as an engineer, so I can expect X. But he kind of corrected that quantitative error. It's like, nope, even if you're trained, sure, they went to X, Y, Z, I don't know, they went to Juilliard, whatever the hell it may be, but you're still gonna get these dusty. Again, it's typically with regard to that sobriety thing, right? You're still gonna get these dusty, non-sober, non-consistent type people, right? And one of the things that I would watch, like, let's say I give you the same kind of project over and over again, right? Here's this particular aspect of a data center, right? And Amazon is building all these data centers over and over and over again. It's a similar type of thing. I would expect that you start getting better at that thing, right? That that the work, the output gets better over time. You would not believe that some people's output gets worse. It's like, like you're getting worse at this. The drawings are getting shittier. You're not paying as much attention as you used to before. What the hell is going on? One of the things I typically used to just expect that, it's like, hey, this is easy. You'll give me the same stuff over and over again. I'm getting paid same amount to kind of repeat. I'm gonna just perfect the hell out of this particular aspect. But no, some people don't do that. And I'm going back now to and I think, yeah, it is the test. That's what we're still on, right? Because I was looking
Yes.
at number 10. We're still on the test, and this evaluation will lead you then, and this is a real thing, will lead you to lose that Amazon project. This particular person I was giving it to, right? I took it away from that person, gave it to somebody else whom you have demonstrated themselves in other aspects, loaded them up with more work, and they shined or shone or whatever the hell the thing is, right? And paying them more money than the other person. And I guess they didn't think that they were getting evaluated by them. I mean, it's just kind of insane. I don't know if you've seen something like that before, Dr. Thunder, like where you're giving them the same kind of task, because these engineering tasks vary like many other kinds of tasks, right? So if you're throwing different balls at someone, you can expect that, oh, maybe they're not so good. When I keep giving you the same pitch over and over again, and you get worse and worse, what the hell is going on there? Anyways.
Yeah, no, totally, and and sometimes you just need people to be able to follow directions and just do what you're telling them to do. And it could be in an area that doesn't necessarily take a lot of skill, or it could be an area that they're not skilled in, but can you follow directions?
Yeah, and this is, by the way, just to interject here, is the other aspect of Kaizo's criticism. The other aspect involved in what Kaizo criticized. The first aspect being that I had a quantitative error regarding, okay, if you're going to train people whom are trained in a particular way, are going to behave in a particular way. Wrong, only a small percentage. And then the other thing is, I need to get into the mode more of breaking things down to a series of steps and really, really just kind of spoon feeding them, like, hey, can you just follow these instructions? Which is,
Right.
I like to avoid that as much as possible, because it's not very efficient, right? Like, it's just not efficient. I need somebody that can think on their feet, generally speaking. But Kaizo is right in the sense that I was way too far on that end, right? again, personality type, introvert, you want to do things, you're perfectionist, some people call it as, right? So, but I had to loosen that up, break things down, systematize them, feed people a set of instructions a little bit more. If I was doing it 5% before, it needs to increase to 15%. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I find that I just don't want to do that. And that's something that I just have to make myself do. Now, but the good thing about it is, and this is part of that whole, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Is that once you have taught a few people the specifics, now they can teach other folks. So it's not, so if you do it well, and then you do a good job of retaining your best people, then really you don't have to do it that many times. Mm-hmm. You just have to do it a few times very effectively. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next thing here. It says, ask how they would handle crisis.
Constantly ask how they would handle the crisis. What do you think? How would you do this? What would you do in this situation? How would you handle a situation like this? I'm doing it for a couple of different reasons. Let me tell you why I'm doing this. One, I really want to know because I'm not seeing everything. So I love to see what other people will give me a point of view on a certain situation or crisis that we're dealing with. Second, I want them to know that I value their opinion and I respect their opinion. Three, this is one more than a couple. The third one is I'm trying to see how they would handle a situation like this, truly crisis-wise, on their own, if they were to make the decision without me being here. How would they have handled this? So I'm always watching for that when I ask them how they would handle. Number 11, I always have.
All right.
This is it's a good one,
Yeah.
though it's an expansion of the test, right?
Yeah.
Because he did talk about test and talk about crisis, right? And then specifically asking the question. Now, the asking the question does add a nuance to it regarding now the first two things he mentioned, right? Regarding them knowing that they're trusted and all those other kinds of things. So that's an extra nuance. One particular critique I would have regarding asking somebody about a crisis is that a crisis and and a question are very, very different things, right? Like a crisis is yeah. I mean, I'm sure we understand the entire mechanism of the body is not the same, right? In a real crisis, this person's heart is beating, the blood pressure is rising, the hair in the skin is raising up, the eyes have dilated. How do you make decisions in that state, right? Is really, and there's no other way to, shall I say, model that other than to put them in that state, right? So I think that the superior, watching them and testing them on the crisis is the superior method than to the asking, right? But I think that the first two things you mentioned regarding, hey, let me get some information from this person. Maybe they know something about what's going on in that department or what really goes down on the ground that they can give me information on. And also there is the I value your opinion aspect of it well. But I don't think you're going to get much information simply by asking someone how to handle a crisis. Now, the flip side of that, in other words, I'm biased in this particular regard because I'm typically not the kind of person that can answer that kind of question very well. Like I'm more like well, throw me the crisis, like well, let's get in there, rather than to sit there and try to logic through it. Because again, going back to statement we made about chaos. Life is chaos. This is your life. Take everything seriously. Just blah blah blah, and you don't know how things are going to pan out. I'm not a big fan of plans. Now, one last thing on this. Sales organizations, businesses of all kinds, they make plans and projections all the time. And not only are they making projections about, let's say, a number that they need to target, they're saying, hey, we're going to get it from this type of place. We're going to get $5 billion from the healthcare space, right? That's what we're targeting. We're going to put resources to account managers and salespeople and ads to target the healthcare space. And we're going to get $5 billion, blah, 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 blah. Rarely ever does it happen that way, okay? it's obvious, right, that it doesn't happen that way. In other words, you might hit the $5 billion, but definitely not in the way you thought. So sitting there and thinking it out is a kind of exercise that I personally just find to be like, a waste of time. Lots of board meetings, lots of presentations and slide decks and charts and stuff. It never happens that way. Okay. We never got the money where we thought we were going to get it from. It happened on the ground with all the, and one more thing there is, okay, and I think that encapsulates this well, is the analogy of driving versus launching a rocket. You see, driving involves all kinds of feedback, right? You
Oh
have the
yeah.
feedback of the brakes, you got feedback on your hands, there's a block on the road there, there's construction, so you have to reroute, blah blah blah. That's how life or success or whatever it is tends to be. Launching a rocket is more like, okay, I need to calculate exactly how much fuel I'm putting in this damn thing, and then I'm going to do XYZ, and I have to stay, all the stages are going to happen perfectly, because once that thing launches, boom, that's it. Right, it launches and it either hits the target or it doesn't. And I think that this rocket launching is more akin to the sitting down and thinking you're going to have this perfect plan, as opposed to driving, which is, hey, get in there, start moving, and pivot, change, switch, and all these other types of things. So those are my general thoughts.
You're clearly an intuitive.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, clearly. In me too. And that's why I like the the steering wheel analogy that I use frequently, where I talk about how, if the car is still, then the steering wheel is of no use. But as soon as the car is moving, the momentum of the car, the steering wheel can, even if you're going the wrong way, can quickly rectify. You'll be going in the right way before you know it, but you have to start moving. Well, I like that because it's every aspect of this you're in control of. It's not like there's any autopilot. It's you're the person that's driving. And again, to borrow from your Jesus take the wheel business, Jesus doesn't take the wheel, right? He uses your hands, right? He's not going to, you're not Adam. You're not, you're not being put under spiritual anesthesia so that Eve can be extracted, so your rib can be extracted and Eve can be made. That's not what this is. This is, you get to make choices. There's available opportunities. There's a lot of different things that you have to make decisions about. And so it's hard to create a real test for being able to think on your feet like that and having those skills to be able to make adjustments other than if you're in an actual situation. And I was thinking about and I just realized something that I don't like about these what are they these math problems they have kids do? What are they called? They're
word problems.
Yeah, they're word problems, but what is the other word for that? It's like Johnny has a bag of apples and Susie has Susie has 7 apples and she realizes she has one less apple than Johnny or whatever. Wait a minute, what was it? Problem. I can't think of the word, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. The reason I think I don't like those is because they're not actually testing your ability to address a real issue. If that makes sense, right? Because if I get in a real situation, what's more important is that these sort of granular skills I have a mastery of, at a level that no matter what the story problem, I think it's called a story problem. Is it a story problem? I think that might be it. No matter what the issue is, the mastery of the skill set, the granular, like the command of every little nuance enables you to be able to solve whatever actual issue, and so I think I realize now why I don't actually like story problems, because it seems artificial. And then I guess you could say, well, how are you going to test those skills? I guess you're stuck with story problems, I guess. But it's but having said that, the real way to test that is in actual situations. And my dad suggested something, and I haven't been assertive about having my son do this. But this is a good thing to have your kids do it. And he's done a little bit of this, but I haven't had him do as much of this. So you give your kid a notebook, a pencil, and a tape measure, and you show them how to measure things. So they go around their house and they measure things, right? And so this table is, 5 foot by 3 feet. This table is this tall. And it teaches them about, measurement, about how to perhaps add some fractions, figure out how to address that problem. And it also gives them a better idea of how big things actually are. Gives them some sort of spatial relationship, and and there's like practically innumerable things around your house to measure, right? And they have to write it down, so it's working on some motor skills and penmanship and all that kind of stuff. You're working on a bunch of things at the same time. That's the point. And it seems to me that is actually where you're going to develop an understanding of actual math, of what math really is. Because math is not these symbols on the page, it's these relationships between, it's these spatial relationships, And so yeah. So those kinds of things seem to be more useful in actually demonstrating whatever your level of mastery or inadequacy is and what things that you need to work on. Also, it's a really good thing for boys to do because it's hands-on and less abstract.
That's very good. Shout out to your dad. That's a classic ENTJ type. It's perfect. It's because they're gonna get to because you're gonna build these intuitions for spatial relationships and the transformations, right? Because a lot of the story problems, you'll find that what they're trying to get you to do is to set up some kind of relationship between two things, right? And a lot of times it's ratios, right? If X men can do Y work at X time, then how much does this? There's like, what's the relationship? What's the ratio? What's some kind of a rate, work per hour, let's say, right? That I can use that's going to take me through all these things. And armed with that, I can do whatever. I think that is a great way to kind of instantiate that building of intuition with these people. And yes, that is the real mathematics. Those are the real skills, not just some silly thing that because literally, I've seen, are there many videos out there on YouTube teaching math and engineering, right? I have a channel, Prometheus Engineering, where I've done my fair share and will continue to do. I'm not as active there right now, but I have a number of videos there. So sometimes I will peruse the other content that's out there, right? the less intuitive content. Because again, what we're talking about is building this intuitions about spatial relationships, and we're talking about building intuition in general. And intuitives are not that many in the world, so most content are going to be different. And literally, I saw this guy write out a state out a problem, and then literally started telling you, take this number and then put it here, and you see this other number in this question here, put it here. And like, bro, like, you're literally just telling the person, whenever you see a story problem like this, take this number, put it here, take some. What the hell are you trying to train, a freaking Excel sheet or a human being? You're supposed to tell them how to think, like, what's the relationship between these things? And if they learn that, then they can learn relationships between all kinds of things, right? Because these ratios are one and the same. There are only so many different ways that things change. Is it linearly? Is it exponentially? Blah blah blah, right? So I find that kind of thing frustrating. So yes, I share your frustration too. Like, I- if I send you this video, you would laugh. You would think it was a joke, but no, it's a serious video. This is the guy seriously started telling people to take a number from a place, put it here, take a number, put it here, and then put a plus sign here, and then you get the answer. Like, bro, like, anyways, yeah.
Yep. Yes. Let's keep going. Call out environment.
A call out environment. When we're building a dream team, I'm not going to call out everybody. I'm not going to challenge everybody. I'm not going to push everybody. A dream team means everybody can call out everybody. If Bob is disappointed with Jack coming in late, Bob, call him out. You have my permission. Call out. If Larry is disappointed with this guy not hitting his deadline, don't come to me and say, Pat, Joey didn't hit his deadline. You're not 6 years old, and he's not 5 years old. You're an adult. He's an adult. Call him out. And then you can say, hey, Pat, I called him out. No problem. I'm totally fine with that. A call-out environment is a requirement to have a dream team. And so, 13th point, and I got one more after.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. There's a little anecdotal story. Well, it's not anecdotal in the sense that it happened to me, but in the founding of PayPal, right? So this guy Peter Thiel had an idea of how to, I think they used to call it. It was back in the day of what was those first smartphones? I forget what they were. I think crap, I forget now. But
Nokia.
It was no the actual smart phones when they first. God. Anyways,
wait a minute. You were talking about the Blackberries.
The Blackberries, exactly.
Okay, all right.
So it was a way of kind of sending money between people who had like Blackberries and stuff like that. They would kind of like beam it to each other, right? And then they developed it into, oh, how about if we just use emails? It seems to be more universal. That way you don't need a Blackberry, blah, blah, blah. But Peter Thiel, first of all, one of the things he did is he obviously reached out to Mr. Elon Musk, whom had a company called X at that time, trying to do the same kind of money transfer thing, and brought him in to that. But the other person that he brought in as well, and part of the reason why he brought in these two people, okay, X was more like a partnership, but he saw the same quality in this other guy called David Sachs, right? David Sachs is somebody he went to college with. David Sachs then went on to found Yammer and many other things, which he sold for billions of dollars, right? But he said, I need somebody that I can yell at, is what Peter Thiel told David Sachs, which obviously means somebody that can yell at me back, right? I need someone where we can really just get down, grind this stuff out, hash it out over a night, rather than have 17 meetings over a 6-week period just so we can say the right thing in the most politically correct way, right? It's like, so it is super helpful to be, and again, it's about that sobriety thing too. You trust each other enough that you're gonna be able to, you trust their opinions enough. You trust that they're gonna be sober and clear-headed enough in a heated situation to be able to have a real vigorous exchange. And this is a very, very efficient way to solve problems. They needed to do that in this startup because things are moving fast. You're getting attacks left, right, and center, having to rethink and move, dodge, bob, and weave. So I think that I like this call-out environment. Well, I'm giving a version of the call-out environment, but basically an environment where people are able to actually take swings. Obviously not personal swings or silly swings or whatever. That's obvious, but right, needless to say. But it is a thing that I think is super important, and it is something that it is in Peter Thiel's book about what made that team. Because by the way, this is one of the legendary teams of our generation, meaning Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and there are many other people there. And all those people, by the way, they're the founders of LinkedIn, YouTube. It's the same people who found PayPal. Look them up. It's called the PayPal Mafia. There's this group of MFers, okay, who started PayPal and then just went and started all kinds of other things. And one of the key things about that group is that they're sluggers, they're tough. They look at Elon, for example, right? He's the most prominent one of them right now, right? They say they speak their mind, and I think that's a key requisite for a successful team.
Yeah. I like this call out thing. I okay, so frequently you see like a perversion of this. I've seen a perversion of this, and that is with only where only some folks are able to call out, but it's not clear who those folks are. So it's not based on a clear hierarchy. It's based on the proper application of chapstick. And a lot of puckering up. And so it turns into kind of a toxic sort of environment. But I think if you're in a scenario where everyone actually can call everyone out, great. I just don't like the favorites version of that, especially when it's not based on a hierarchy. It's just based on who puckered up better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely one perversion of it. There's another kind of perversion where people don't understand the things that matter. Or let me put it this way. Like, to speak on something as opposed to act on it, I think is a distinction people don't seem to understand. It's like, it doesn't matter that you want to make sure that your opinion is heard on this particular thing, even though your opinion is not going to do anything, right? I'm going to talk smack about, sometimes these people are not even necessarily in the same team. They might be in different verticals. Okay. Let's take this YouTube space, for example. It is an example, right? People calling out other people when it doesn't matter. It's like, you don't have to like what people are doing, okay? You don't have to like it. You don't have to show up. You don't have to do anything, okay? You calling them out does not change anything. So why don't you just act? Why don't you just do what you are going to do? Why don't you form your team, right? If you think, oh, this thing needs to be focused on and blah, 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 form your team. Throwing stones at some other, like, it doesn't do, that is another perversion of it that just kind of weird to me. Like, not understanding what's tenable with regards to a series of actions as opposed to just making sure your opinions are known and calling people out when it doesn't matter at the end of the day. All that energy should be put into refining your product.
Yeah, and something that occurred to me too is if you don't understand what the objective is, or then your criticisms will be trivial, whereas someone else's criticisms will be actually important. Right? So they just, called you out, and so now you've waited for your opportunity to call them out. But when you call them out, it just shows that you don't actually understand why it is that you're there in the first place, what it is that y'all are doing. Yeah. So you can have something to say, in other words. Let's keep it going.
This is paint a picture on who they could be on this vision, okay? Paint a picture. And for me, you know, I look at somebody, I'll work with them, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. This person could totally end up one day being the president of this thing and running the entire revenue of this company, or having a whole department to themselves. This is a big opportunity, and they're a very important role of the company. Let me tell them about it. Hey, John, let me tell you who you could be. Paint a picture on who they could be. Constantly paint the picture. I think so many times we're focused here on painting the picture for us, which is still necessary because you need the juice and the power to keep going. But you got to paint the picture here. They'll give you a lot more juice and power than you can create on your own, as long as you're going out here and saying, listen, this is what we can do. And I think during the part of us doing this, you could end up being this person in the company if you do X, Y, Z. Last.
So some of that, I resist. I tend to resist. So I have to convince you of who you are. You know, like I tend to resist that in one sense, but in the other sense, it seems like I'm involved in showing people who they are frequently. Maybe just through our interactions, like who they think I am, my high expectations of them. And so without having to sort of cast a vision of who they are, which I think that's really their responsibility to do, they need to know who they are. And regardless, I mean, if I tell them who they are, that's not, that's not, I don't know how, I don't know how, I mean, sometimes people, they can use, so for in particular, like young people, like you go and you start taking lessons and a teacher starts noticing certain things in the student, and then they can tell them, they can give them some encouragement, you know, and they're sort of trying to figure out, do I have what it takes at a sort of simple level? But beyond that, it seems to me that you should really kind of know who you are and be pressing towards what that is, what that means. And it might not be know who you are. That seems maybe more finite than it is, because it's a journey, right? It's not something that you just figure out. It's something that you're exploring. But I don't know that I can explore that for you. So I don't know.
It's interesting. And I like that you went down to the young. So this is something very important for your toddlers and your kindergartners, right? You show up to their games, or you do these kinds of things, and you encourage them, and you push them along, so that they need more help in this journey that you described, the younger that they are, typically, right? So as a general rule of human development, right, this type of encouragement, which heavily should fall on the laps of parents, is important, right? And then you mentioned the maybe not so subtle and perhaps not very conscious hints that you might give somebody regarding who they are. You know, the expectations. Like if you call a particular employee under an emergency situation, and you're like, hey, can you hook us up with, I need your help. That's not gonna, they know what just happened, right? Right?
Mhm.
They're like, wow, they called on me in this situation, right? And then you show gratitude afterwards, right? That's enough. So I do the kind of things that you mentioned in terms of, it's going to be very clear from the interaction that I'm having with this person, the things that I trust them with, that, oh, I see a lot of. So if I'm calling you in an emergency, I don't need to tell you, oh, I think you might be. I've already started treating you like you were my freaking vice president, right? Like I've
Yeah.
already started treating you like you were right there at the helm with me, and I think that that'll be my modality as well. I don't want to. I don't like the big jingoism because this is all part of the whole vision thing, right? He's a big vision guy. He likes to. He's obviously super extroverted, right? So
Right, right.
he's oh my god, he's gonna get all in there. It's interesting. He also because he has I think he sold that company now, but he had a insurance company, sort of kind of multi-level marketing like, right? But they're out there selling insurance, and they do these events. He actually had Jordan Peterson in one of his events actually, and it's this kind of big vision rally type stuff, right? And he's on stage and he's going full bore with it, right? So I know that's the kind of person that he is. I agree with you that I don't think that's very effective. It's entertaining, okay, right?
Yeah.
It's entertaining. It might be fun, and you get blah blah blah. But once you've made a discernment that hey, this person is a certain type of person, as you test and as you trust, the way in which you interact with them and the things that you put on their lap and the kinds of because you're going to bring them in. That whole emergency situation I described is so much involved in that. You're bringing them in behind the scenes to show them, hey, I'm dealing with this problem. You're trusting them enough, and then obviously when they pull through, they're going to see that gratitude and all that kind of stuff. Plus, also, a nice little money doesn't hurt either, right, Dr. Tony? You emphasize that. You're like, hey, you give them a nice little remuneration for that. They'll notice that. F your stories, but
That's right. That's right. Show me the money. Uh, you know, I was thinking too, in my style of leadership tends to be, I'm, I try to, I want to say yes to people. So I feel like my job is to find ways to say yes. Because it encourages people to bring me ideas, to experiment, to work things out. It gives them more ownership. And it's probably a vote of confidence to them that there must be something in me that, is being valued here. And, so that kind of thing. So even without having to go into, this whole knowing who you are business, which in a certain brand of what I consider to be sort of surface level Cub Scout Christianity, pop Christian, mega church Christianity, there's a lot of talk about identity, knowing who you are in Christ and knowing who you are. And it seems to me that is milk level stuff, not meat level stuff. If you don't, on a base level, know who you are, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I think that is low level stuff. It's treated as if in many ways it's flipped upside down. And there's all this discussion, especially in charismatic sort of circles. There's all of this talk about knowing who you are and, and your destiny and, in him and all of this kind of stuff. First of all, I don't know what you're talking about because this stuff is so abstractly framed. But even when it does get a little bit more granular, it just seems like I said, Cub Scout level Christianity. And you need to be Eagle Scout by now. You need to have this stuff already worked out. so that you can actually get somewhere and make progress. Unfortunately, there's a lot of coddling and lowest common denominator Christianity, where since you got so many people in the room, you can't really say really meaningful, deep stuff that you can't expect people to be able to digest meat, right? Like you gotta kind of be on milk level, and it's disappointing. But I'm not surprised by it, because that's what you get with popularity. Now you have to, whatever it is that you did to get popular, you have to keep doing that. So you can't really go anywhere, right? And more people in the building is not the same as growing. I mean, that's one way to grow. That's growing in numbers, but that's not getting deeper. That's the trade-off. If you want to be popular, then you have to be okay with doing the same thing over and over. And that means that there's not going to be very much growth. So that seems to be, that's what we're talking here. And it's part of the reason why I resist. In general, I have like a resistance against telling people who they are, or like, pumping them up like, oh, you have this aspect of, to you, and you're unusual, and you're blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do any of that. And if I have to do that, then I think what it is that I'm about to say next, you're not going to know what I'm talking about anyway. And I guess, I don't know, maybe that makes me some elitist or something and out of touch and whatever. I don't know. But that's where that is for me. And I just don't want to waste any time. All of us are getting older. That's just the way that it works. And I have a limited amount of time to make whatever impact I can make. And if I got to slow down, I can't go as far as I need to. So I'm going to need the folks that can come with me to come with me. All right, here we go. Here's 14.
This one, which everything I told you today doesn't work unless you don't do number 14. None of this stuff I told you is effective or it's even relevant unless you're not all in. You must be all in. If the leader in charge ain't all in, these guys are going to go find somebody else who is all in. And believe me, they're going to find those people. Believers always have a place. Always have a place. Believers don't care about their resumes. Do you know why? Because the market's always looking for them. Always looking for them. And if you're somebody that's all in and you start finding believers, you start turning them into true believers, and you start following some of these 13 points that I'm covering with you, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, when you're going to look around, you're going to say, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And everyone's calling you genius, and you know you're not a genius. You just were able to put a dream team together that got your business, your team, your company, whatever that you're doing, to get to levels that others can't get to. So, having said that, if you got any questions, any comments, any thoughts about today's...
All right.
All in. Put your chips in.
So first of all, I want to hear your reaction to my last statement about what I said last, and then I want to hear what you think about the all in business.
So when it comes to depth versus surface level stuff like that, right? And then you say, oh, you think you're being an elitist. Um, that may be true, but I could tell you that um, based on my observations, I'm probably way worse than you when it comes to uh, engaging with certain things with certain people. Now, if we keep it like within the world of, let's say, Christianity or even religion in general, right? I typically don't like to. I mean, there's certain things. I forgot the analogy I thought of before, and it's certain things, and religion and slash philosophy is one of those things where it's only good when it is. Well, again, this is I'm speaking personally here. This is for me. Okay, let me say it's only good for me when it is done at the right level, with the right, whether it's the right amount of reverence, the right
Yeah.
attitude, the right spirit, and whatnot. And
Yeah, orthodox. Yeah, that's called orthodox. Orthodoxy and
uh,
orthopraxy. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
and it's and while everything else is like, it's almost like eating raw pork. It's like, for example, right? It's like mid-level philosophy, mid-level also kind of religious belief practice
Mhm.
is not worth. Now let me and I know, because this is a broad kind of a whole area, but in general, I don't believe, or it's not a question of even believe. I'm convinced of the fact that there's certain things that ultimately are not supposed to be spoken about. Even the religions themselves, let's say Christianity, will tell you that, hey, like, you should not be creating graven images. In other words, when I say spoken, I'm talking about coming up with human conceptions of certain things, right? You're going to come up with human conception, a human image, and human symbols, right? This is all
Yeah.
means of communication and representation. And that ultimately these things are not to be. And that is why, if you are going to speak about it at all, it better be at the highest level, right next to I'm barely even saying anything. Right? Like, in other words, you're at that level where you are understanding that everything that you're positing, everything that you're stating is almost tentative. It's a uh, the real thing in this case will be the faith. And again, your uh, it's akin to the eye-opening thing that you did for that kid when you told him he's this is his life, right? That kind of inner subjective experience, and experience is not necessarily a great word, is where it's at. And that tread very carefully once you start speaking. And that the
Mm.
worst thing you could do, and as I think it's idol worship, as a matter of fact, is when you start going on the very low mid level. Low level is something else completely, but the mid level tends to be worse. I think that a lot of people worship idols and they don't know it. I think most people actually worship idols, right? And they don't even know it. That their God, their Christianity, even the church that they go to, and all these things that they say, all those cliches that you kind of repeated, these are just idols to them, right? They can't really tell you what they are, what they're stating, and they hang their hat on it in certain weird ways. And I don't know if you know what I mean, right? But in terms of
I know
the
exactly
idol
what you
worship.
mean. Oh yeah.
So that idol worship thing, and by the way, I was actually I saw a video today, it was on Instagram, where it's at a church and there are these people singing and dancing, right? It's like a performance. Three of them are singing there, spinning around in there, and I was just like, this is obviously just like a gimmick to kind of seem cool. Like, oh, look at them, we too can sing and dance on the stage, right? And I'm not, and I thought of you because I'm like, oh, Dr. Thunder, he's the promulgator and the promoter of this blasphemy. But I know that,
Oh
not really.
man.
She's out the devil's music.
Well, that's right. That's the real devil's music, right?
But
That's
I mean,
terrible.
yeah. So it's not about all music, just like it's not about all speech and all representation. But
Right.
I think it's so easy to slip into idol worship once you begin to open your mouth. Hence, that's why I like that Jordan Peterson approach of like, don't ask me whether I believe in God. Because you're trying to get me to show a card here, flash of this there, and
Yeah.
like, what is really going on, right? What is really going on with you here? Like, what do you want from me? Because I know how to have a conversation about quote unquote God. Even saying the name God, it's kind of like, like it's just, but I know how to have it and with whom to have it and to be careful and be reverent about it. Hence, I don't
Yeah.
want to just bring it up with everybody, every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Let me flash this card for you. Oh, I'm part of this team. Oh, you're part of that team. Or is Jordan Peterson a Christian yet? Like, has he come out? Like,
Yeah.
what exactly are you? What game exactly are you playing? So 100%, I agree with you. I tend to use the whole model of idol worship to, and this goes on in so many different facets, so many different ways. People just have all these idols of concepts that they've put in their head and things that they say. You mentioned in him and all these are just idols, man. So yeah.
Idols and silly stuff. I like the thing that you're saying about like to flash your membership card or something. It's like it's another form of tribalism. But it's like the worst kind of tribalism because it's not even necessarily bound together in the same purpose. See, because tribalism is a good thing when you guys are all okay, but we have an overall purpose for this, and we can, it's another example of if you want to go far, you got to go together. So you find people that have similar values to you, have similar understandings of the nature of reality, and you tend to be able to communicate with them more efficiently and not even have to communicate about certain things, and stuff just gets done, right? See, that's good. But in this sense, it's the tribalism stuff, but I'm not sure that people even understand this in the same way what the goal is. Like what's the purpose of this tribalism? Like, are we even going anywhere? Is it just to like have some people to hang out with? Oh, like I you know what I'm saying? Like I don't even know that they are thinking thinking the same thoughts or similarly or anything. It's just you said the same words. That's good enough for me. I don't have a nuanced enough understanding of what you're talking about to actually discuss this in a granular fashion. Now, if you would have said no, then you'd be on the outs. So it's like we were talking a couple weeks ago on Case Closed, where when these university professors were asked these rather, difficult questions, not difficult in can you answer these questions or not, like do you understand what's being asked, but difficult in no matter what answer you gave, it was not going to be satisfactory. The best answer would have just been to say yes.
Yeah.
Just say yes and hope they don't ask you any follow-up questions.
Yeah. That is a good one. That is a good one. Yeah, just say yes. If you say no, now you're in the outs. In the right instances, you just say yes and you hope that things move on. Because I don't want to be in that situation where I say yes. If we bring, if let's say somebody asks you, oh, so what, you go to some church.
What do you think of what do you think of infant baptism? You said yes. What do you? Well, actually, see, but here's the
exactly.
thing. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I would actually dig that, because then we're talking about actual things. But they wouldn't even do that. It would be something trivial.
That would be quite surprising if somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's too put together. Right.
Yeah, someone asks you, oh, so if you're giving your life to Christ or something like that, or are you've been saved, certain
Oh
things that
goodness.
they might ask, and then you're like, I don't want to say yes to you because uh I don't know what exactly I'm signing up for here in your head, and I don't want to
No.
be in your head like that. Like I don't no 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 no. And yes, it does come off as arrogant and all these other kinds of things, and so on and so on and so on, or like you're being shifty and stuff like that. Um, to describe, how extreme I am on this, as I've said oftentimes before, I don't even think that there's even a conversation about does God exist or not. Like, I think that conversation doesn't go anywhere
Mm.
because for me, it's it's there is no. It's like the question doesn't make sense, right? And then how am I going to be having this conversation with most people about why that question doesn't even make sense at all, right? Now, there is what is that proof of God that you gave to Dana? What's the name of that one again?
Yeah, the
Um,
Kalam cosmological argument for the existence of God.
there you go.
And it's the and
Now,
it's the and it's the uh William Craig, Dr. William Craig. It's his
mhm,
it's his version of that argument.
there you go. His version. Okay. Now, the thing about it is, so the most I will typically kind of go with regards to, so I typically talk about an experiential, from a subjective place, reason why I don't think the question makes sense, right? But
Mhm.
from a conceptual, intuitive level, if you move towards, if let's say you're a scientist that's also philosophically grounded. In other words, you take ontology, which is metaphysics and epistemology, seriously, as an underpinning of whatever it is you're trying to describe out there in the world, and you're not just some kind of weird hanging up in the air empiricist. If you think that there's something that we're talking about, you're gonna eventually end up in a place that says, if I can think about this space of all possible computations, then it must exist, right? Which is kind of like that argument about the existence of God as well, because to even say it is, and when you observe and you're looking to in the world, in your search in the world, you're gonna find out, oh, it is about these computations and stuff. And yes, there are many, many, many universes that could be described, many multiverse, blah blah blah. We're living in a particular kind of corner, blah blah blah. But what really underlies it is that there's this space of all possible computations, that it is all very, it's all encompassing. They're very nice formal ways of describing what I'm saying right now. So it's not just some kind of BS. But if that statement can be made, then it exists, right? So that is
Mm.
kind of the more external, objective way of me kind of saying why it is silly to then start talking about, 'cause, what are we talking about then? Like having the rest is then I would I like conversations, if we want to get into about ethics, especially from a subjective standpoint, mastering yourself. What exactly is it to be contrite? Uh, for example, I think a lot of people need to be whipped into, they learn moral lessons in life, which I think is very wrong. I think
Mm.
that you should already know that, in other words, before I do something wrong, I know it's wrong, man. I don't, it's not like, oh yeah, I learned no. It's like, I know it's wrong. Okay. I still did it. Okay. And in other words, people, it's like what I'm describing is seems to seem like radical responsibility in a certain sense, right? I take full responsibility for my action. The kind of lessons, so the juxtaposition, and I was having a conversation about this. You have these moral lessons which people seem, the normies tend to be. That's what they need to be whipped into getting in order by life in terms of this, as opposed to just knowing a priori. Hey, I'm making these mistakes. I'll have to make sacrifices in the future to make up for it. I'll have to, I'm making these mistakes, facing existence, facing my God, right? Like I know, like So in all that is also the contrition and the possibility for change, or whatever you want to call it, right? But um, so they tend not to they tend to only get moral when they get slapped in the face and they don't want to be slapped in the face anymore, as though they did not. It's a very consequentialist is another kind of way of putting it. They have this kind of very consequentialist kind of morality. But the things that they should be learning about, they're learning from. In other words, like, hey, you're forming a team, you're leveling up, you're creating a family, right? How do you get in that car and start driving and making moves? And those things they never learn. They don't seem to learn, right? That's where the learning should happen. When it comes to whether or not you're a POS or not, you should already know you're a POS. Like,
Right.
your righteousness is like a dirty rag. You should already know that. So righteousness
Yep.
like a dirty rag. There's no point in talking about that stuff, either from an experiential point of view or from this other point of view, which I kind of gave. And if you're going to talk about it at all, you need to understand that everything within that space of possible computation that I said, any particular slices that you start taking in order to kind of represent, you need to know that you are doing that. Right? It's you who's doing that, right?
Yep.
And you need to freaking humble yourself and know that. But people think, oh, this is the truth, if you will, right? So it's hard to have this kinds of conversation. So I completely agree with you that it is elitist and whatnot, but I think it's 100% justified, right? I cannot, in good faith, be any other way. Like, no.
Yeah, and it's I found myself, thinking about this. So if I was a normie and I hadn't thought through certain things and come to certain conclusions and made certain transitions, then I could be like a pig in slop right now, man. I could be totally having a grand old time, but the more that I've learned and the more transitions, and I feel like I have cornered myself. I've cornered myself more and more to have certain perspectives, or not perspective, but it's like my response is much more limited. Like I feel less comfortable just saying anything, So it's like,
I mean,
it's open in one sense, but it's also restrictive because I know the range of foolishness that abounds. Go say what you're gonna say.
So if this, the day of judgment, right? Which is not some day, generally speaking. But if we want to just talk about an aspect of this day of judgment thing, which is really facing one's iniquities, right? I find that, or what you just said regarding these kind of cornering of yourself, it brings that to mind, in the sense that if you are looking at yourself, again, with regards to this kind of a moral thing, the judgment of your conscience and understanding, then the more closer you can be every day to making every day the day of judgment, the better off, generally speaking, because hell might be, on the other hand, something whereby that's the first day you ever faced yourself. Now that would be hell. Okay. If all of a sudden you've just been in this kind of weird place of like, oh, I'm healing, and oh, I'm self-loving, and oh, I don't know, whatever, and all that kind of BS of just no responsibility, no accountability, you're just floating through space, and all of a sudden you have to really face yourself. That'll be horrible, because even me speaking, and I'm sure yourself, that there's not the full facing yet. But how much more worse it will be if you don't even face these things on a daily basis. Yeah, so I think that is quite correct. You're kind of moving yourself into this particular kind of corner. You're recognizing also, or it's not just also, it's just a different way of saying the same thing. Different way of saying the same thing is you're recognizing that you can't get away with certain things. Okay, like
100%.
you can't plead ignorance of the law, right? It's
That's
like
right.
you know yourself. It's just kind of just repeating myself now about that. I know what is wrong. Okay, I'm not gonna pretend like I didn't know. I'm not gonna act like, oh, I need life to teach me this lesson. It's like, no, I know I can't get away with this, even though I did it. Even though
Yep.
I might do something tomorrow too that is bad, which is highly likely. Okay, but I can't get away with it. There's no me kind of putting myself in some corner of, oh, I was a baby, I'm an infant, oh, I don't really know what's going on. Oh, it was just this. I was coming from a place of whatever. I was lacking self-love. I was whatever it is, all these things that people float around in their head, you know, you look at yourself, and because I try to restrict myself from using the word God, but I would just say, you know that God knows you're not getting away with, like, you are not getting away with that. Like,
Yeah.
he knows.
Yeah, this confronting yourself, daily confronting yourself and learning more, and scrutinize yourself at higher levels every day, This is why I don't subscribe to that saved terminology. You're not saved. You're just getting started. You actually, I don't even know if people that are running around talking about how they're saved. I'm sorry to say this. I'm not even sure that they've gotten started yet. I know that sounds really bad. That sounds terrible. And probably people would not be happy with me for saying that. But the acknowledgement that this is a process seems to me to be critical. And if you think that you've evidenced by the terminology that you've arrived, that makes me question, like, I'm trying not to, but I'm in a corner, and I'm. This makes me call a bunch of stuff into question.
I mean, there are many church fathers and maybe some other people, right, that have written in this light, right? So you can
Absolutely,
find solace
100%.
in this guy. Yeah, if you think you're being overly judgmental, it's like, well, no, other people have written this, right? The book
I
of
know I'm not.
Ecclesiastes.
I know that I'm not, but we live in America, in the West, and that's the thing, and there's not much attention given to history. So
the book of Ecclesiastes is one such book. It's a different book, but it's very much in line with this kind of a looking at yourself and looking at the whole vanity of even your conceptions of God, your conceptions of righteousness, even the right thing that you did yesterday or whatever the hell you thought all that crap. You need to chill about it. Okay, you need to chill. And so when somebody starts going on this save thing and the other, and you're like, whoa, like I thought that's like the starting line, man. Like, that's like, yeah, I thought we were past that.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's like this propositional. It's proposition based. It's like, I have an idea, I formed a thought, and then somehow that proposition, that thought, that's the salvation. I just, unless you're just talking about some freaking magic tricks, what does transformation mean then? What is sanctification? What does Paul mean when he says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling? What does it mean when he says, pursue to the end, press to the end, and then you'll be saved? What's this talk about there being a day of salvation and that being in the future, not something that's happened already? I mean, what are you being saved from? You're saved from what? Who decides that you're saved? Who's going to do the saving? Have they done that yet? It's just like basic level stuff. I don't even actually need any access to early church fathers' writings or any recognition of any historical book. I can, to just talk through that and make that stuff sound like total foolishness. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure a bunch of folks that, get upset with me for saying that, but I'm sorry, you've not arrived. You haven't even got started yet. And for the simple fact that you haven't even acknowledged the basic stuff about this process, the work of salvation, I don't know what to say. So
Yeah, just perhaps a final word on that is
sure.
okay. So then someone says, right? Okay, sure, Dr. Thunder, we've heard you. So what is to be done then about the normies? And I say, okay, look, it's not that crazy. It's about faith and works. Okay.
Yep.
Not about these propositions and all these tags, this, that, the other, confessions of conjuring, whatever. What the hell, right? Get them on this faith program and get them practicing, right?
Yep.
And that's it, right? And then, as I said, if you want to do this other thing about, talking about it, then you better make sure you're not getting into the idol stuff. So another way of just saying it is to really, really, again, reemphasize the point of not creating graven images. Back then, because people are like, oh, well, as long as I don't carve something, I guess I'm fine. While they're carving all kinds of craziness in their head, right? All kinds of crazy
it's called
notions,
private interpretations.
Exactly, all that they're carving in their head, and then they're like, well, I guess, but it's like I think that part definitely needs to be emphasized for everybody, such that then anybody that then wants to go into the conceptual space and talk about God, if you will, and this and that you need to really do it at the level where you're just one step away from understanding that, hey, this thing cannot be spoken about. So when I'm speaking
Right.
about it, it's just you and me trying to feel out, and then we need to drop it after we're done. Okay.
Yep.
This is not, yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of dropping it when we're done, it appears that we have reached the end of a program for today. Would you like to give a summation of the two-part series here?
Yeah. Oh yeah, let's do a summation of the two-part series. He ended up with what should be a prerequisite, right? Which is, hey, if you're gonna be bringing people in, you need to be all in, right? You got to be all in. Now I'm not gonna quibble too much about this all in notion. I don't like things like that. They seem too very binary and almost childish. It's like, am I all in? Come on, I'm doing something here. Okay, I'm either doing it or I'm not. So I'm doing it. I'm going to keep on doing it. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to change. If I find that it's no longer serving my purpose, yes, I may divert. But I'm definitely not wishy-washy. But I guess it's a bias of my personality type. So not wishy-washy. Not as steadfast as the Dr. Thunder types, right? But I'm definitely not wishy-washy. So the concept of being all in is just kind of like, well, yeah, of course. Come on, I'm here, right? I mean, am I in the hospital or something? Like, of course I'm all in, right? So having said that, I think that in this part, okay, and then I'll talk about the next part. This part really, the through line that I see in this part is about management of crisis, okay? And I think that you will see that because he started out with testing people. And one of the main things that he talked about when he that test before you trust thing was to see how they operate under crisis. I said that crisis thing kind of dovetails with the sobriety form of trust, right? I want to trust someone's sobriety because you can always teach competence, generally speaking, and you can gauge competence and you can be like, okay, well, I guess this person can do this much, right? Good, but they're sober, excellent. And then I mentioned a trust in intentions, which tends not to be as important to me. I don't want to get into people's heads. And I do, trust me, I have all kinds of, I can't stop my mind from thinking, but it's not as important to me. I also think it's kind of foolhardy to get into people's heads and like, oh, well, you like this thing, or you don't, do you really like that, blah blah, all these other kinds of things. Seems to be very feelings based when you start getting into people's heads like that. But he talked about the crisis situation, right? Putting people through crisis. He talked about asking them the question about crisis, right? Asking them, how would you deal with crisis? Again, back to this whole point of testing people. He talked about the call out as well, which is, again, crisis. How do you, being able to operate in a heated situation, the call out culture, which I give the example of Peter Thiel calling David Sachs because he went to college with David Sachs, and they were both members of a debate team. They were roommates, so they were probably going at each other's throats, right? So it's like, I need somebody like that in this team, someone who could take the heat, handle the heat. We can hash things out in one day rather than wait 6 weeks, right? So I think that throughout his, he gave 7, included testing people, the crisis thing, the call out thing, and all that stuff. But I think the main through line in this part was, how well do people handle crisis? And then if we go back to the first part, it really was, again, about understanding how to balance people's persona as opposed to just their skill, right? You have different personas and you're going to need to be able to balance them. Another key aspect from part 1 was competition. You mentioned the example of hiring 2 people at the same time, putting them together and seeing how they compete. And then there's that aspect of vision, which he also kind of mentioned this time in different regards in this as well, selling the vision and all those other kinds of things. But understanding that, hey, people are going to need to be bought in, as he says, believers, truth believers, and so on and so forth. But then we added that, hey, there is this other category of a mercenary type. The question of whether they're all in or not tends not to be important. They're more self-driven. They're this kind of solid entity whom you can trust their sobriety in. You give them a task, they're going to perform at a high level, and you don't have to worry about whether or not they're quote unquote all in. And then with regards to this mentoring and developing people, right? We talked about training. Now I'm going back to this, the latter part now, training and the testing, but also that encouragement, which we say it doesn't necessarily have to be as upfront as a super extrovert like Patrick Bet-David might do it, but it might be as simple as developing that trust and then leaning on someone when you need that help, and then showing appreciation, and then they'll know, oh, I am quite valuable. This skill that I've been working on is actually useful out there, has a lot of utility in the world, and I like this. So overall today, in this part, it was about crisis, and in the previous part, I think it was more about competition, right? If you will. Now, but definitely go back and check out the previous part for the full list of 7, and we just went through another list of 7. That's my attempt at a summary there.
Yeah, no, very, very nice, very nice. And make sure you all come back for Case Closed on Sunday. Actually, what's the date on Sunday?
23rd. I think it's Christmas Eve. I don't.
Is it Christmas Eve?
I'm down if you're down.
It is. It is Christmas Eve. So come on Christmas Eve. For a Case Closed, we'll probably have we'll have something trending topical. We did a year in review sort of show this past Sunday. I don't know, maybe something seasonal. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll
no, no. Or maybe we might continue because they requested a part 2.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
There were some other things that we can maybe hash out a little bit more. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that sounds great. So 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Also tomorrow morning, I've got my regular Rolling Thunder, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I'm also have a Christmas show I'm doing at 6 p.m. to 9:45, and that is being live streamed. So check out Dr. Thunder Quartet there. Friday morning will be a special edition of Rolling Thunder. Not only will it be an open panel, but I will have a co-host. Keep It 100 will be my co-host, And I think we're going to wrap up that academic topic that we've been talking about, where this 28-point sweep in the attendance, in acquisition of undergraduate degrees, from the 70s, where it was 13% fewer women, and now it is 15% more women getting undergraduate degrees than men, 28% sweep, and some of the implications of that in other developments. And so we may be doing part 3 of that with an open panel. So that's the time. We'll see you next time. Be well.
Peace.